Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 30 minutes, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar pitches hard for countering the three evils of terrorism, extremism and separatism at the SCO heads of government meet in Islamabad. Israel opens up some aid access for Gaza after the 30-day US ultimatum to make more help available for Gazans or to be prepared to lose some American military assistance. Volodymyr Zelensky presents his victory plan in the Ukrainian parliament with a blueprint to wrap up the war no later than 2025. The Kremlin taunts Ukraine to sober up. A productive meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Council of Heads of Government concluded in Islamabad on Wednesday. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar signed 8 outcome documents. Posting on microblogging site X, the minister said that India made a positive and constructive contribution to the deliberations. He also said that India extends its best wishes to Russia as it takes over the SCO CHG presidency. Now let's understand the 8 key takeaways from the Indian perspective. Now these are developing a dialogue on the idea of one Earth, one family, one future, outcomes of initiatives like SCO Startup Forum, SWG on startups and innovation and traditional medicine, welcomed by SCO members, DPI and digital inclusion becoming part of SCO cooperation framework, SCO taking inspiration from Mission Life to achieving UNSDGs, enhancing global food security and nutrition through promoting use of climate resilient and nutritious grains such as millets, upholding fair and balanced connectivity projects in accordance with international law, the goals and principles of the UN Charter and the SCO Charter. Also, re-emphasizing rules-based, non-discriminatory, open, fair, inclusive and transparent multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. In addition to that, opposing protectionist actions, unilateral sanctions and trade restrictions that undermine the multilateral trading system and impede global sustainable development. And India's External Affairs Minister also delivered the nation's statement at the SCO Council of Heads of Government meeting this morning in Islamabad. In his address, Dr. Jaishankar flagged concerns over terrorism and extremism. He further added that SCO's primary goal of combating terrorism, separatism and extremism is even more crucial in current times. It requires honest conversation, trust, good neighborliness and reaffirming commitment to SCO Charter. SCO needs to be firm and uncompromising in countering the three evils. And after attending the SCO summit, the External Affairs Minister has departed from Islamabad. On again X, he expressed his gratitude towards the Pakistani government's hospitality and courtesies. Now, the Israel and Hezbollah conflict also rages on with strikes from both sides. There were hits that were made in South Beirut early Wednesday. This comes less than an hour after the Israeli military ordered residents to leave parts of the Lebanese capital. Smoke billowed from between buildings in Hareth Reek after the first strike, which followed Israeli military spokesperson Avichai Adrai telling people to leave the area. The Israeli military issued the new order for residents living in southern Beirut to evacuate the region, a warning which usually precedes strikes on the area pinpointed in the Lebanese capital against the Hezbollah. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has opposed any ceasefire deal that would not halt Hezbollah from rearming. While speaking to French President Emmanuel Macron, the Israeli PM said he was opposed to a unilateral ceasefire which does not change the security situation in Lebanon and which will only return to the ways it was. Netanyahu and the Israeli military have insisted there must be a buffer zone along Israel's border with Lebanon where there is no presence of Hezbollah fighters. And the United States has asked Israel to improve Gaza humanitarian situation in the next month or risk military aid. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, in a letter to Israeli officials, said they must take steps within 30 days to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza to avoid legal action involving U.S. military aid. The letter cited Israel's denial of most humanitarian movements between northern and southern Gaza and burdensome and excessive restrictions on what goods can enter Gaza. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the letter was not meant as a threat but reiterated the urgency of increasing humanitarian assistance in Gaza.
We know that it's possible to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza. We know it can be done. We know that the various logistical and bureaucratic obstacles can be surmounted. And so it is incumbent upon the government of Israel to surmount those challenges and get assistance in.
And Miller also spelled out the reasons for the U.S. to give a 30-day window for this purpose.
We didn't think it was appropriate to send a letter and just say this has to happen overnight. We give make clear there's a short window in which we want to see changes because the humanitarian situation is so dire on the ground.
Now, as the Russia-Ukraine war nears about 1,000 days of fighting, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has released a victory plan which aims at bringing an end to the ongoing conflict. The victory plan was presented to the Ukrainian parliament on Wednesday based on the inputs Zelensky received from Kyiv's Western allies. The Ukrainian president criticized China, Iran and North Korea for their support of Moscow in Russia's more than 2-year conflict with Ukraine. Zelensky ruled out ceding the Ukrainian territory in his victory plan. He's also urged the West to lift restrictions on long-range arms. Along with this, Ukrainian president has also urged his country's allies in the West to extend an invitation to Kyiv to join NATO as part of his plan to end Russia's invasion. He also called for the deployment in Ukraine of a comprehensive force to deter more Russian attacks. The Ukrainian president said that he will present this victory plan at the EU summit on Thursday. The Kremlin has dismissed the victory plan outlined by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, calling for bolstered Western support, saying it was some ephemeral peace plan. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the only peace plan there can be is for the Kyiv regime to realize the futility of the policy it is pursuing and to understand the need to sober up. And the European Union on Wednesday has held its first summit with Gulf nations. The 6 Arab states, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in the Gulf Cooperation Council have discussed trade and investment, renewable energy, regional security and citizens' issues such as visas with the Europeans. Middle East and Russia-Ukraine conflicts have also topped the agenda of the meet. US President Joe Biden is preparing to visit Berlin, part of his farewell tour before next month's election. He had originally planned to be in the country last week for a summit on helping Ukraine, but had to cancel due to Hurricane Milton in Florida. And for more on this trip, let's bring in DW's Kate Ferguson from Berlin. Good evening to you, Kate. Apart from Ukraine, which other issues are likely to be highest on the agenda in talks between President Biden and Chancellor Scholz?
Good evening. Well, apart from their shared interest in helping Ukraine, the two leaders will also be discussing the conflict in the Middle East. Now, Biden and Scholz are both vocal in their support of Israel, but it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall in their private conversations, especially given revelations in a new book by the veteran US journalist Bob Woodward, in which he writes that Biden privately referred to Netanyahu as both a liar and a bad guy. Now, how free Biden might be in his conversations with Scholz, well, who knows? But it would would be certainly interesting to be privy to them. Both the US and Germany have drawn attention to the disastrous humanitarian situation in Gaza, and this will certainly be a topic in their discussions as well.
Yes, undoubtedly. Now, as Biden prepares to leave office, Kate, what is at stake for Germany when it comes to the outcome of the upcoming US election with either Harris or Trump next in the White House?
Sure, well, given that the race is so tight, Germany is keen to show that it's ready to work with either candidate, which of course doesn't mean that many lawmakers don't have a preferred one. And actually, a few months ago, before Biden pulled out of the race, several high-ranking German politicians attended the Republican National Convention. At that time, they were keen to court Republican lawmakers. The outcome now seems far less certain than it did then. And from Germany's perspective, a Harris victory would certainly be reassuring in the sense that she offers predictability in her support of Ukraine or of institutions like NATO. Fundamentally, though, no matter who wins the White House, we're living in an era where old assumptions about the global order no longer apply, and Europe and Germany in particular are under pressure to become a little less dependent on the United States.
All right, well, let's see how things shape up. Not too long to find out now who will be in the Oval Office next in January. Till then, it's still Biden who will still command whatever US does, the kind of force that it commands around the world. Thanks a lot for joining us, Kate. Now, China's Taiwan Affairs Office has said on Wednesday that the country will not promise to renounce the use of force over Taiwan. However, this is aimed at external interference and a small minority of separatists. China staged a day of large-scale drills around the island on Monday. It said were a warning to separatist acts following last week's National Day speech by Taiwan President Lai Ching-te. China has over the past 5 years sent warships and warplanes in the waters and skies around Taiwan on an almost daily basis.
We are willing to strive for the prospect of peaceful reunification with the utmost sincerity and endeavor, but we will never commit ourselves to renouncing the use of force. This is aimed at the interference of external forces and the very small number of Taiwan separatists for Taiwan independence and their independence activities, not the vast majority of Taiwan's people.
Let's now take a look at some other stories making news around the world as well. Now, as part of diplomatic reach out to countries in the Middle East, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi met his Jordanian counterpart Ayman Safadi in Amman on Wednesday. The meeting is aimed at the ongoing regional conflict between Israel and terrorist outfit Hamas. At least one person was reportedly killed in a refinery fire in Khuzestan province of Iran on Tuesday. Many people were injured in the incident as well. The blaze was brought under control by firefighting teams. The cause of the incident is under investigation by authorities. According to Turkey's Disaster and Emergency Authority AFAD, the eastern province of Malatya was hit by a 5.9 magnitude earthquake on Wednesday. So far, there's no report of any major damage or casualties. People gathered in Pico de la Nieves, the highest mountain in Gran Canaria, to watch comet C/2 2023 A3 Tushishan Atlas, termed as the comet of the century. The comet only returns to the inner solar system every 80,000 years. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. India's President D Murmu wraps up a successful visit to Algeria and is on her way now to Mauritania on the second leg of her 3 African nations visit. And Donald Trump posts vitriol against his biopic The Apprentice, releasing in theatres with less than 3 weeks left for the US presidential polls.
This week on Defense Dynamics, we will talk about the recent Army Commanders Conference 2024 held at Gangtok in Sikkim. We will tell you why these conferences are held and what do they discuss. Why was this Army Commanders Conference at Gangtok strategically so important? On the other side, in our neighborhood, why is Pashtun Tahaffuz movement a challenge for Pakistan? And also we'll be diving deep into the story that has been at the forefront of global headlines, the tensions between China and Taiwan. And also we'll tell you how Taiwan plans to defend itself. Watch Defense Dynamics on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. IST only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, India's President D Murmu has concluded a successful visit to Algeria. The President is now headed to Mauritania on the second leg of her three African nations visit. In Algeria, the President was accorded a warm ceremonial welcome. She was seen off by Algerian Prime Minister Nadir Zarboui and other higher officials. During her one-day visit to Mauritania, the President is scheduled to hold bilateral meetings with Mauritanian leadership and interact with the Indian diaspora there. The President will visit Malawi from the 17th to the 19th of this month for the final leg of a three-nation Africa visit. India's Minister for New and Renewable Energy, Prahlad Joshi, briefed the media on Wednesday at the curtain raiser of the 7th Assembly of the International Solar Alliance, or the ISA. From the 3rd to the 6th of November, world leaders, ministers, policymakers and industry pioneers will converge at the 7th session of the ISA Assembly to shape the future of solar energy. Discussions will focus on ISA's strategic plan, key programs and critical steps to accelerate global solar energy deployment. The Indian minister highlighted the threefold agenda at the ISA. He also highlighted that the Assembly of the ISA will focus on the widespread adoption of solar power.
Leaders from across the world will convert during the forthcoming 7th Assembly of ISA to promote the widespread adoption of the solar power. I take this opportunity to call upon ISA members, signatories and prospective countries to unite on the third threefold agenda at the upcoming Assembly. 1. Empowering the member countries to adopt the solar energy as the energy source of choice. Make energy access universal by supporting the solar entrepreneurs to scale up the local solutions. Mobilize the finance to speed up the solar deployment.
India's Minister for Commerce and Industry Piyush Goyal addressed the valedictory session at the first Indian Foundation for Quality Management on Wednesday. Emphasizing the Modi government's efforts to build a quality ecosystem in India, he urged industry stakeholders to actively participate in positioning Brand India as a symbol of excellence, where products made in India are recognized globally for their high quality.
Until 2014, in India, we had only 14 quality control orders, only 14, covering about 106 products. In the last 10 years, we have expanded to 174 quality control orders, covering today's 732 products. A 7x growth or a 6x growth in 10 years to ensure that more and more people become aligned with better quality standards.
Now, over a dozen hoax calls have taken place related to Indian Airlines international as well as domestic flights over the last 2 days. On Wednesday, a security alert regarding a bomb threat was received concerning an Akasa Air flight en route from Delhi to Bangalore. The flight had 174 passengers, 3 infants and 7 crew members on board. Following standard safety protocols, the flight was promptly redirected back to IJ Airport, Delhi, where it landed safely. As of now, the aircraft has been positioned at an isolation bay and the airline, Akasa Air, is continuing to monitor the situation in coordination with local authorities. National Conference leader Omar Abdullah has taken oath as the first Chief Minister of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir on Wednesday. The oath was administered by Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha. The swearing-in ceremony was attended by Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge, National Conference Chief Farooq Abdullah and other leaders. It's noteworthy that this is the first elected government since the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019. Omar's party secured 42 seats out of 90, while the Congress in alliance with the NC won only 6 seats with a total of 48 seats for the coalition. The Congress has announced to not join the ministry but support from the outside. The Union Territory was under presidential rule since 2018, and that was revoked recently, paving the way for a new government in the Union Territory. On to the United States. A Georgia judge on Tuesday temporarily blocked a new rule requiring labor-intensive counting of potentially millions of ballots in the presidential election. Georgia, where early voting began on Tuesday, is one of the 7 states likely to determine the contest between Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and his Democratic opponent, Vice President Kamala Harris. Here's more in this report.
Voters in Georgia turned out in record numbers as the battleground state opened early voting for the 5th of November presidential election. Georgia had posted record turnout for the first day of early voting within 6 hours of polls opening, where 16 electoral votes are up for grabs. In many states, early voting is already underway. Georgia's Secretary of State said at least 251,000 votes have already been cast. Georgia is one of the 7 competitive battleground states expected to play a decisive role in deciding the election outcome. Early voting will continue until November 1st, with some counties offering additional voting on Saturdays and Sundays. Meanwhile, a Fulton County judge in Georgia ruled that certifying elections is a required duty of county election boards, and they're not allowed to refuse the results based on suspicion of miscounts or fraud. Former US President Donald Trump on Tuesday rallied his supporters in Atlanta, Georgia, as voters in the state turned out in record numbers to cast their ballots early.
They did something to Biden that was amazing. They stole the election from him. I mean, I'm not a fan of Biden. Who could be? But they stole the election. They took it away like candy from a baby. And he's angry. And they're all angry. They're angry as hell. I think he likes me more than he likes her. Can you believe it?
Following an interview with radio host Charlamagne Tha God, US Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris spoke to a small crowd at a viewing party on Tuesday about her connection to Detroit and her plans for tax credits to raise kids and start businesses.
A big part of my plan is to build what I call an opportunity economy, which includes for home ownership, giving people who are first-time homeowners a $25,000 down payment assistance to be able to buy their first home.
Harris and Trump are locked in a tight race ahead of the November 5 election, which is expected to be decided by slim margins and where neither side can afford any defections from the main voter bases their parties count on. Ayushi Bhatnagar for DD India.
Now, Trump has been spitting fire over the release of The Apprentice, a new biopic that explores Trump's rise to prominence as a real estate tycoon in the 1980s. It also portrays a few unsavory incidents and aspects of his life, and though the film hasn't done well in the first week of its extremely limited theatre release, Trump pouring vitriol over it could still fill the theatres.
This is Donald Trump from Mr. Cohn. Thank you so much.
Donald who?
Explosive Donald Trump biopic The Apprentice drew sharp criticism from Trump as he lashed out at the movie crew on social media. Trump called the biopic, which is about his early years as a real estate mogul, a cheap, defamatory and politically disgusting hatchet job. The movie hit US theaters last week, with filmmakers gambling that it'll draw audiences in a fiercely polarized nation just weeks before its subject selection showdown with rival Kamala Harris. None of the major Hollywood studios risked distributing the polarized movie. Actor Jeremy Strong said Donald Trump's recent post criticizing the new movie, The Apprentice, could be a good thing for the film, but also troubling and upsetting for the world.
Roy taught Donald Trump to always attack and to deny everything, and that's exactly what he did in his post yesterday. He attacked us, he denied the veracity of this movie, but the movie is based in historical fact, and I find it troubling that he continues to spread hatred and divisiveness, and it's a sad thing for our world. And
starring opposite actor Sebastian Stan as Trump, Strong plays political fixer Roy Cohn. Film writer Gabriel Sherman said at the premiere, explaining that the film is neither pro or anti-Trump. Despite the hype, the film failed to impress at box office on its opening weekend in America. According to Box Office Mojo, it made it to the number 10 slot. Director Ali Abbasi said he is not surprised though, as he says there's Trump fatigue in the US ahead of the presidential election next month. The Apprentice, which also stars Maria Bakalova as Ivana Trump, is out in the UK on October 18. Bureau Report, DD India.
And before we close the show, India's northeastern state of Assam goes in celebration mode as devotees prepare to worship Goddess Lakshmi on the auspicious occasion of full moon night. In various parts of the state, markets are bustling with life as people throng to purchase clay idols of the goddess along with essential puja items. Devotees participate in celebrations, offering prayers for prosperity and well-being for themselves and their loved ones. And with that, it's a wrap for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code on the screen right now and download the app. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy from Office here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.